Hi, my name's Cody.
You can't change up how you do it.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back to the Grass Sucks Grow Food podcast. My name's Cody.
And I'm Ariel.
And we are the owners of Ursa and Vixen Seed Co. Today we're going to be talking about 5 things that we think we are going to do differently, that we have either tested or seen fail completely this year, that we're going to completely change next year.
Yeah, and so if you haven't seen any of our podcasts yet, we did take a pretty significant break over the bulk of the summer and like busier months for us, and so now that the garden is kind of all wound down and just put away for the winter, then we have a little bit more time on our hands to devote to the podcast again, and hopefully we can keep up with it better this time, because I think our last one was in June or July.
Yeah, it was.
So, a little bit of a break, little wee break, but we're happy to be back and talk to everybody, and we'd love to know afterwards what you would do differently in your garden versus this year, or what you want to try for next year, or if you're a beginner or for first time gardener, any questions that you have about any of the methods that we're talking about today, and how we can help you be more successful in your garden for next year.
So the first thing that we've talked about that we 100% agree on is diversifying the rows and interplanting.
Yeah, so I planned down to like the inch every single part of our garden this year, and then it was a great plan, like grid paper, everything.
Wonderful.
But as we got into it and we were transplanting tons of starts and direct sowing tons of things, it just became kind of overwhelming, and so I kind of ditched the plan halfway through, and which is fine. You don't have to have a plan for your garden. You can just kind of plant things.
You do need starts. That is one thing that's very important.
Yeah. Don't forget to start your seeds early. That we're coming up on seed starting season.
You do need starts, but you don't necessarily need a plan.
Right. But so there's obviously if you follow any companion planting, there are certain things you don't want to plant next to each other, just for fungal or disease reasons or pests even.
This book is great. Carrots Love Tomatoes, a great companion planting book that makes it very simple.
Yeah,
and I like that it
helpful.
does talk about the nutrients side of things, and what certain plants use more nutrients and then certain plants use less of.
Right. Yeah, that's a great read. I actually picked that up while thrifting one day, so you could probably find it used or check it out at your local library. But yeah, another one we would definitely recommend. But so for me, with my garden planting that I did this year, I did more of what I had grown up with, which was more, almost what I think is just kind of like a traditional rows, and everything was kind of grouped together, with things. So all of our tomatoes were in one bed. We had all the corn, we did do a little bit of Three Sisters planting, but all the kale was separate and my other brassicas were separate. But what we found is we did struggle with pests this year, and now we expanded our garden a ton from last year. So
I think we tripled the space, if not more. So we had not had to deal with a ton of pest issues last year and before that. So this time, we had these newly established no-dig beds, and which grew great.
Yeah, they did awesome, because if you followed, if you followed along with us or have looked back at our earlier posts, you would I've seen some content about how we put those in our backyard, straight on top of grass, and they did fabulously. We had great yields from our garden this year, and I was a little worried about all of the grass, which, as far as weeding goes, you
definitely have to weed more.
We had a ton, but with
more than established beds.
Right, so that is expected with a new no-dig bed.
Yeah.
But I found that, since we did not do as much interplanting or diversifying our rows and stuff, we didn't utilize the space as well as we could have. And I found we actually ended up with some empty spacing that, I was running here and there trying to plant things, interplant as we went along. But I know we can do better next year.
Which diversifying rows just means that you're not planting things together. You're spreading out your brassicas, your greens, your tomatoes. It's not all in one row. It's all over the place. And it actually creates
a better environment for them to grow,
right?
Because one can act as a trap crop, as in the insects go to that one over the others, and then obviously crop rotation is super important as well.
Right, and so I know, like, especially with, like, our summer squash, I mean, who doesn't deal with squash bugs? It's just, they are evil. But
unless you grow trombochinos.
Unless you grow trombochinos, which we're going to try and see if they can beat the squash bugs next year. But, so seeds will be coming for those next year. But, for our summer squash this year, they were all planted together. We had marigolds planted in there and stuff, but, and like collards, but I didn't have like a ton of interplanting, and that was probably the biggest hit that we had from the pests. That, and then, it actually happened on the opposite side of our garden with our winter squash. Same thing. No interplanting there, just all the winter squash together, and we had some significant pest issues. And so,
with the watermelons.
They weren't as bad.
They weren't as bad until later into the season.
Right. We had some pretty good watermelons, but...
right there at the end, though, that's when the pests really started showing up.
And
then they clustered.
We did even plant later in the season. I think it was like almost July or even beginning of July when I started planting like the pumpkins and stuff. And we still did not miss all the squash bugs. We did miss a lot of the vine borers because... I think they only have like 1 or 2 generations, and then they, they're done for the season. So that is like a tip, if you are struggling with the vine borers, then maybe plant your cucurbitas later in the season, and they grow really quickly. So that's not, something to really worry about. But we still had a lot of pest issues. So, going forward, how can we, change things so that we, get better yields off of our all of our cucurbitas. And so one thing would be that we're going to try is the diversifying of the crops and having them separate instead of losing everything altogether in one spot.
Yeah.
So
and interplanting, and again, it's just filling all of the space. Yeah. More food is better than less food.
Right. And we, Cody did a TikTok not that long ago talking about how spacing in the garden is not a hard rule. It's more just a guideline. And so with interplanting, we've had some questions about interplanting.
Especially with different root depths.
Right. So you can interplant things quite closely together and, increase the amount of things that you can grow in a smaller space. And so that's absolutely something that we will...
and if you can,
a lot more of.
If you have things that are going to come to like full, they're going to be done
that you'll harvest
earlier, then you can intersow, after the fact. So you can plant your first thing, whether it be...
Yeah, so sort of succession sowing.
Yeah, but just succession sowing through different varieties or different types of
we did
food.
do that with our we planted radishes under all our tomatoes, and our radishes were harvested by the time the tomatoes even overshadowed them, and so that worked out. That worked pretty great.
The collards probably should have been on the outside of the tomatoes versus the inside of the tomatoes.
I need to switch up the way I plan things, but they did
good too. I mean, as far as collards were concerned, they did all right.
Yeah, we actually had some pretty good successes this year. Like, we were pretty proud of ourselves because, with the newly established no-dig beds, and especially since no-dig was a new method that we were trying, we were concerned, and, it actually did fabulously, so.
So, for sure, diversifying our rows and interplanting a lot more to get more food out.
Yeah.
And that... succession sowing.
Yeah, more
succession sowing, more efficient.
Use of the space.
Yeah. Mulch earlier and mulch heavier. Yeah. This was something that I think we were both confused about because we were worried about root rot, about rotting the base.
It kind of just got down to time issues, and we were we have 2 small children, so it's just the 2 of us here, so we did get a little overwhelmed at certain points in the garden with weeding and with direct sowing and stuff, and so
you weed less if you mulch heavier,
right? So we just used chopped straw mulch that what is it called?
I don't know, but it has 99.9% of the seeds taken out.
Yeah, so it doesn't have all the weeds
it's not
seeds
hay.
In there.
It's not hay. Don't use hay. There are people that use hay.
Yeah.
Don't use hay. It has a bunch of seeds.
So yeah, you can get this. They're like bales, plastic covered bales at Home Depot or Lowe's for pretty cheap. But so we did use that in a lot of areas of the garden. And then there were some areas like our corn where we did not mulch and we should have.
Yeah.
And that was just because time got away with us. The corn grew super fast. And I did not want to cover up the beans that I had planted below the corn, because we planted them afterwards. And so before we knew it, it was already later in the season. And I was like, oh, crap, we should have mulch that sooner to help with that moisture retention and with the weeds. And so
which we did that with the watermelons and it did great.
Right.
We didn't have near as many weed problems in the watermelons, and we actually watered less than what I think we would have.
Right. And with our tomatoes as well, tomatoes need consistent watering to prevent cracking and stuff. So
again, another mulching really helped there. We had a lot less cracking than I think we would have. Because of how random the rain was this year.
Right. So, yes, mulch. Definitely mulch earlier. You want to wait until your seedlings are at least a few inches tall so that, you can mulch around them and not cover them up. Cover up any of the true leaves that are growing. So, you can use...
Mulch heavy.
Yeah, you can, and by heavy we mean,
thicker layers of mulch.
You don't want it to cover up the plant.
No.
And you also don't want to get it too close to the stem of the plant because you don't want to, get any root rot.
I think the main issue that we ran into is you have to wait until the plant is more established before you start mulching closer to it. So maybe we should just put the mulch down and then creep the mulch in as the plant starts to become more established.
But again, simple fix, something that, we just have to remember for next year's garden.
And it's going to help. I mean, if you're a beginner gardener, mulch more than you think you need. Mm-hmm. We were putting in thinner layers because that's just what we're used to, but the thicker layers definitely do matter and definitely do make the difference.
You will retain the moisture that way, which is watering less, more consistent, moisture in the soil, and that's better all around for any crop you're going to grow.
And less cracking on tomatoes. That was another big thing because the cracks can lead to pests getting into your tomatoes and actually eating them.
Yeah, or bacteria.
So. Or bacteria, yeah. Number 3, schedule fertilizer better.
Yeah.
I just came up with the 1 in 15.
Yeah.
1 in 15 keeps your plants green.
Yeah. So fertilizing every 2 weeks. So like you're saying, the 1st and the 15th were an easy way to remember that. And we use the seaweed or kelp fertilizer.
We have bone meal too. We have
bone meal, and you can use the fish fertilizer is a good one. Anything that's going to have kind of a well-rounded amount.
I think I'm going to start the tomatoes on a blood meal first.
Yeah.
To establish that, and then also have the bone meal mixed in. I might do a blood meal bone meal mix.
We'll have to see. Well, that we might have to do another podcast on fertilizer.
Yeah,
we had done one I think a while back, but so fertilizing more regularly will definitely help your plants, and you don't want to do that more often than that. And if you've noticed that it's been too long, then it's never too late to at least throw some fertilizer on there.
Yeah, and the point of the fertilizer, especially with the organic fertilizer, is you're feeding the soil over and over. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily feeding the plants. The plants are receiving all of the macronutrients that they need from the soil. Mm-hmm. And so the organic fertilizer, you have a little bit more leeway with. So when you plant your plants in the ground, so you plant your starts in the ground, you can actually fertilize right then, which usually you wouldn't do with a synthetic fertilizer because it would, just dump all of the macronutrients into that plant, and it might burn it.
Yeah, burn your tender plant. So, organic fertilizers all the way. We do 100% organic, growing in our garden, and very, very. No pesticides really, but I was going to say very little, but.
We have 0.
We use BT when needed, and BT is organic as well. So, and totally organic. Natural. Yeah. Okay, so more consistent watering schedule. So we did have a lot of rain this summer. And again, with the mulching, this will help. But just being more consistent with watering, that will definitely help. And I
don't know if it's even more watering. It's more checking.
Yeah, more checking because, you can think, oh, I need to water my garden every day, but you don't actually have to because...
especially if you mulch thick.
Right. So if if you just stick your finger in the dirt, we joke about it, just stick a finger in it.
Just 1 inch in,
or up to your first knuckle and just, check and see if you feel moisture in the soil. It's similar with houseplants, it's kind of the same thing.
Well, kind of.
Well, kind of. But... you don't want to overwater and you don't want to water too, shallowly too frequently because it'll actually help the root depth and growth of your plants if you water deeper and less.
Which means thicker stalks, thicker root systems.
Yeah, and just healthier plants.
Healthier plants all around, and that means bigger plants, which is also a great thing because that means more fruit.
Yeah. So, so we'll kind of, just do better about checking that next year. So...
And we're also going to start introducing more watering options like soaker hoses.
Yeah, that was something, with the size of our garden, we absolutely, it's hard. It's hard to do it by hand.
Well, we didn't know that increasing the size that much would have increased the amount of watering that we had to do. Well, all over the place.
I knew, but...
But you didn't really know.
We have, 2 hoses on a splitter, from the spigot. So, but still, it took a significant amount of time for us to water everything, especially if you're watering, at the base of the plants and to not, wet any foliage and stuff. So that is something, using some soaker hoses, we're definitely going to be doing that.
Which a soaker hose is just, it's just a hose.
Holes.
Yeah. Well, it's
or the...
It's like a mesh material.
Permeable, yeah. So, but
and it just slowly lets out the water over the whole row.
Right, and so drip irrigation is another one that we might look into doing. Yeah. We want to, check out a few different methods and see what we like best.
So there's a lot of options, and then of course for the raised beds, you have a lot more options, which is weird because you can do soaker hoses. You can do the small sprayers. You can do quite a few different things. The reason that you can't do that necessarily on the in-ground beds is because you can step on them.
Right.
You can damage it.
The majority
really
of our garden is in-ground, and we only have a couple little raised beds.
Yeah.
And... so it's something, and especially with no dig, this is one fact that a lot of people know. You can step on the beds, because like with raised beds or even a tilled garden, you want to refrain from stepping on all the beds where you have everything planted because you don't want to compact the soil. But with no dig, it's actually totally fine. You're not compacting because your top few inches that you have layered is all compost, and it's not going to compact the soil.
You're stepping on a barrier, basically.
Right.
You're not stepping on the soil, the topsoil. You're actually stepping on that barrier of compost.
And again, if you want to learn more about no dig, more in depth, Charles Dowding is the no dig
there's a lot of people in the
guy a lot of people use this method, but he's got a lot of information and
we also
he's very
have
knowledgeable.
a couple different videos on no dig as well. If you want to go back and check out that. This I think has a small caveat of soil types and what they have to do with watering. So if you're a beginner gardener and you're watering maybe clay soil or sandy soil, or if you're lucky enough to have, the great topsoil that we have, surprisingly.
We're in the Midwest, so
we're lucky enough to get that.
Yeah, we are in the middle of farmland, and so there is a lot of farming around us. So,
but if your soil is whether it's dead or clay or sandy, your watering and the way that you water varies.
Right, and so that's something you just have to kind of keep an eye on, and maybe look at your soil, look at what type you have. There's a lot of ways you can look up online on how to determine what soil type you have, or get your soil tested by your local extension office. But
if you want to,
there's
you don't, easy ways to just go in and just make a small hole and feel the soil and feel what it feels.
You can ball it up in your hand. It has more clay and stuff. So, but you're right. It does depend. So it will vary a little bit, but
so more consistent watering for us may not necessarily be the case for you. If you have clay soil, you do not need more consistent watering. You need deep watering, and then you need to check it constantly.
Yeah.
And if you have sandy soil, you need more consistent watering.
Right. And you don't want to oversaturate.
Yeah.
Because that does lead to fungal issues as well, and your plants are not going to be happy. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last, number 5, we have better crop protection. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about having pest issues and stuff. So, and again, it's just one of those things where you don't really know how bad the pests are going to be until you're in the middle of it. And because some people don't struggle with, certain pests in their areas, their regions. And we did find that our brassicas got hit pretty hard with the cabbage moths. So, and then I think it's the pickle moth, I want to say. They have like a little striped caterpillar, almost an
right
inchworm.
There at the end of the season.
Yeah, they came right at the end of the season and just like destroyed the brassicas, mostly the collards and the kale. And so I was a little late getting protection on, like some insect netting on some of those brassicas. But I did start out like with my cabbage with the netting over it, and we had some beautiful cabbage. So that is definitely something if you are struggling, with pests and you have, something like a brassica doesn't have a flower that needs to be pollinated, then insect netting is going to be your best friend. And it's going to be my best friend next year because I'm going to buy a ton of it.
Insect netting, hoops.
We might do some little, the floating row covers on the hoops even,
the bird netting was super useful.
Oh, yes. Birds and squirrels. We have battled them a lot. And what's funny...
Our own birds. Our chickens.
Our chickens, yes. They...
in the chicken garden.
Yeah, over on the side of the garden where we have the chickens, we have some beds that have just 2-foot tall chicken wire fencing around it. And for the most part, our older chickens, they did not care, to even bother with it. They won't jump. They're not going to mess with it. But our newest set of chicks that are now, young pullets, they are smart and they have figured out how to use plant the marigolds planted around the fencing to climb and hop over.
Yeah.
So they get in there and they destroy everything. So bird netting will absolutely be added over the top of those beds next year. And we do have it over our raised beds, and that has helped tremendously with the squirrels. They really like to get in there, and they will find any hole to, try to wiggle in and go dig and eat all your little tender greens and stuff. They even try to get into our garlic this fall.
They eat seeds, they eat greens, they eat anything.
And they're more just destructive because they dig. Yeah. And so I've had a lot of like little lettuce seedlings totally uprooted and destroyed because of squirrels, and birds come and eat any little green thing they see, if you have it planted in a bed. So definitely bird netting. 100%, yeah. And the pollinators can still get in, so that is helpful.
That is, that's the best thing. The pollinators can still get in, they can still pollinate. Not that you're pollinating your greens.
No, but if you're having issues with squirrels and birds with like your tomatoes and stuff, we did not see any problems with that this year, but...
No, but they're in the middle, so... Those are actually in the middle of our yard. They're not closer to the edge where our larger canopy is.
Right. So, and this is just, this is all just things that we've kind of, just figured out as we went along, and, that we, realized, we need to switch this up next year. So, and we had a similar list from last year that we were like, okay, let's, fix these things this year. One of those was like, more diligent about, keeping up with our compost. Yeah. And we did that, and we've actually, had some good compost come out of there that we were able to use. And so, that's something we're going to be able to continue to, work on and do. And it's good to kind of write these things down as you go through the season, or at least make mental notes. And
write it down.
Write it down. You're not
Don't make mental notes.
You're not going to remember. I'm not going to remember.
Someone might, but they're going to be happy that they write it down.
It's not
anyways.
me. So, but it is helpful to have it at least written down, just a little note just to remember. I do keep a garden journal even to know, like, this did not work for me this year, and this is what I can change for next year. But, it doesn't mean that like for us, we don't consider, ourselves failing at certain things, but it is sad in the moment to like lose an entire crop of something, like for us, like the winter squashes and pumpkins.
We got quite a few winter squash. We got the little green UFOs. We got the yellow UFOs. No, that was
the summer squash.
Oh, you're right.
No, the winter squash. It was just decimated. And so, that was sad. No pumpkins this fall. So,
yeah.
That, in the moment, I felt like a failure, with that at least. But, I know that, we can try something else.
Yeah.
Next year we're going to try something else and just see what works. And maybe try some different varieties and, see what we can do. But, so let us know, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today.
Sure.
Or if there's any, input that you have or things that, we struggled with that, you might have some tips for us even.
So
we'd love to hear.
The 5 things we were talking about are diversifying rows and interplanting, mulching earlier and heavier and thicker, scheduling fertilizer better, more consistent watering, and better crop protection.
Yep. So, you want to finish this?
This has been the Grass Ducks Grow Food podcast. My name's Cody.
And I'm Ariel.
And thank you so much for watching. If you have not checked us out on Instagram or TikTok, we would love to have you check us out there. We post content regularly.
Yeah.
You can also check out our website at ursaandvixen.com.
Yeah, we've got lots of heirloom varieties. Always, open pollinated, non-GMO, not that's a topic for a different day, not that matters.
Heirloom, non-GMO, high-quality seeds.
Yeah. All right.
At ursaandvixen.com. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.